So much of life, of business, has to do with mindset. And when you have the right mindset as a business owner, well, I'm not saying running a business is easy, but it's a lot easier than if you don't have the right mindset. As a matter of fact, it's really difficult to really reach true levels of success if you don't have the right entrepreneurial mindset. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. So with us is Isaac Hoe. Now, he's a master sales and mindset coach and sought after health expert who helps entrepreneurs double to triple their income while having peace and ease inside and outside of their business. Now, his clients routinely sell $20,000 to $50,000 packages, and he helps clients make more sales by transforming their mindset, emotions, and well-being. Now, Isaac started helping clients at 17 years old with their health. His drive to help clients led him to study with instructors and doctors in France, New Zealand, Mexico, Australia, and the United States. Now, he helped clients eliminate chronic pain, triple their income, and even conceive the children they wanted. And when he started to feel burnout and overwhelmed, as many of us do, he decided to redesign his business and sold his first $18,000 paid in full package. That's when he started helping clients repackage their offers and sell high ticket. Now, his mission is to help move entrepreneurs out of overwhelm and fatigue, fall in love with the service they provide, and create a lifestyle of freedom and joy. Isaac, this is awesome. I'm so excited that you're here today.
Thanks, Ty. Thanks for having me.
So what do you think? Well, why do you think the entrepreneurial mindset is so important?
Yeah, because as an entrepreneur, we are constantly creating and in charge of our business. And like my wife worked in corporate for many years while I was an entrepreneur. I opened my first business at 22, and she had a job in corporate. And what I found was really interesting is the thing she wasn't so good at in her corporate job, they had other people that would pick that role up. But when you're an entrepreneur and you're in charge of all these different roles and you have all these different hats, well, there's no one there to say, hey, you're really dropping the ball and the company can't succeed until you pick the ball up. And that was really the difference that I saw. I thought it was really interesting because there were areas I could see I was weak in, but I would kind of glaze over them, gloss over them. And I realized in these big Fortune 500 companies my wife worked for, that they did not have that way of being. They would find people to fill those spots. They would put together strong teams to fill that void. And as an entrepreneur, our mindset determines whether we avoid these areas or we address them. And addressing them either leads to having the business we want, or not addressing them leads to continuing to have the symptoms that we don't want.
So what are some of the first things that you do with the clients that you help to kind of do a reset and get their mindset on the right path?
Yeah, like we can just take a general example. It can be a little bit vague if we don't have a real example, but usually someone come to me and there's some kind of symptom. And this is my background as a therapist, is there's a symptom. And then what we have to understand is the mechanism of what creates someone having a symptom. That way we can decide how do we need to change or address something to actually change the symptom. But it really comes from understanding the mechanism. And with mindset, what happens is there's a mechanism to beliefs. There's a mechanism to behaviors. And understanding how somebody thinks about the way they think about something determines how they react to it and how they create these symptoms. So oftentimes what I'm looking for is what's the symptom they're complaining of? What's the mechanism that would create them having that kind of symptom? And how are they thinking about it and reacting to it? That's really the mindset mechanism of what creates our outcomes.
So give me an idea of an example of symptom.
Sure. So an example, Ty, would be, and this is something I see very commonly, an entrepreneur who is saying, wow, I've worked really hard my whole life to build this 7-figure business. And I have this dream of retiring and either traveling around the world, or maybe they have clients that their goal is to travel with their families on a sailboat. Like that's coming up for one of my clients. And they get to that point and they're really not in the place, haven't taken care of themselves to a place where they can actually really enjoy that because they've spent so much time and so much energy in their business. And in this specific scenario, let's say they have a way of thinking about their health, thinking about exercise, thinking about their nutrition that creates them having their current result, which is not the result that they want to have. So in this situation, I'll give you this example, is they might say like, I know I need to work out, but I hate working out. So then the real question is like, what are they doing or thinking that workout needs to be that it's such a painful experience that they hate it? Because if they're in this constant relationship of hating their experience in this area, they're going to avoid it. And it's going to consistently be negative. So understanding how that person's thinking about it, what their actual beliefs about how exercise should be, what the experience should be like, how hard they have to push themselves. That can be in nutrition as well. Those limiting beliefs determine their emotional response. And then that creates them not wanting to engage, or even making a hiring decision where they may even pick someone that confirms the belief that it has to feel really, really awful. And then they quit. And then they go, I never got into that situation where I was physically able to go on that trip, enjoy that retirement, or have the experience with my family that I really wanted.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like they create mental models one way, and then you got to break that down and then rebuild the mental model based on like, that misbelief to then kind of restructure what it is that they're actually, how they're perceiving whatever it is that they're perceiving.
Absolutely. There's a mental model.
Is it possible to even retire and go live on a sailboat? Because realistically, every entrepreneur I know has something similar, right? I want to get out of this. I'm going to sell my business and go do X. And then like they all come back into entrepreneurship. I mean, from what I've noticed, like very few go retired and stay retired. Like they might go there for a year or 2 years now, like, okay, I'm buying or launching a new business. Is that a shift, or is that just the way we're built? Like, is that it? Because I always wonder that. I even talk about retiring and people around me laugh. They're like, it's impossible. You can never retire. You get so bored. But what's your thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think their idea of retirement is what they can see their highest aspiration from where they're currently standing. And when I was 22, it was my goal to have this gym. I wanted this turf gym. I'd really modeled it after what I thought was the best facilities at the time. And I built that gym. And then I was really depressed. I sat inside my gym after I had trained my first batch of clients. I looked at this beautiful facility and I felt this overwhelming sadness because that was my highest aspiration. And then what happened was my next aspiration showed up. So it's not about the retirement. It's about giving yourself that experience so you can see what's next for you. And then once you're there and you're in that place, what usually reveals itself is the thing that's next for you.
That's interesting. So it's always about, setting out what's next. Maybe it's not another business. Maybe it's charity work. Maybe it's whatever it may be, but you've got to have those aspirations to go for. Just as entrepreneurs, we're just built to chase those things. So even if we're not chasing a new business or more money, then what you're saying is we need aspirations to chase to make sure that we're just constantly in a state where like we feel like we're accomplishing something.
Absolutely. It's like one of the areas that I do see with quite a few male entrepreneurs is this idea that there's going to be this right partner for them. And when they're going to have a child, what age, if they get this younger partner. I'll hear this all the time from younger men. And I've been in a situation like that. And the aspiration in that case is to be married, have a family, and really feel fulfilled in your love. Now, the scary thing for some of them is to actually get there, because then what? Then what happens next? Now I have a family. It's the chapter you've not thought about. And sometimes being afraid of what's next can stop them from actually being able to commit and say, yeah, like I'm ready to do this and I'm ready to have a family and see what's next, because there's a lot of uncertainty there. So for some entrepreneurs, and I think especially more successful entrepreneurs, they understand that about themselves. They actually get to the goal. They don't distract from the goal. And then once they're there, the next thing can show up and they can engage in a different company or a passion project. Or for myself, one of the things I have is I have mentees and they invest with me, but they're young men that I meet that I really resonate, that I feel like I can help them in their life and I can help them in their business. And it's really, really fun for me. But if I was worried about my finances, if I was worried about not having enough time, I wouldn't be in a position where I'd be able to be present and mentor someone in that kind of way. And
you mentioned a lot on the health side of things. So how much is that really relative to having the right mindset in business? Is, being healthy, taking care of your body, physical health and mental health?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's impossible to have a healthy brain that's swimming in the chemicals of unhealthy chemistry. So if you have a toxic bloodstream sitting and you have a great brain, but it's sitting in a toxic blood chemistry, then it's going to be impossible to really be performing at your best. And so an example of this is a lot of the areas that I'll work with clients in is different kind of bacterial infections. So just to kind of gloss over it, but you can get different kinds of bacterial infections. They're not maybe acute, but they change your chemistry. And the way I find these is I look at correlations in blood panels. And so you can have people that will suffer from social anxiety. Now, a lot of these initial emotional struggles, Ty, they come from something in the past. You could say they're psychological, but the psychology changes the chemistry, and then the chemistry becomes dominant. So then changing the mindset around that is only possible if you simultaneously change the chemistry. So you have to do work in both areas. And that's an area of, for example, like these chemical releases called acetaldehyde. Well, they're very similar to ethanol toxicity. And so just like you'll see some people with anxiety talking to themselves on the street, it's like they've got no filter. And you see this in really bad alcoholics that are on the street, just kind of muttering to themselves. People can get a lot of those side effects of the ethanol poisoning. And it's really hard to have great mindset when you're freaking out and your brain's inflamed and you have all these toxicities. So the physical side of it is very, very important. It's not just one or the other. You really have to do both.
So what do you recommend for that? I mean, obviously, outside a healthy diet and exercise, do you recommend ongoing like blood panels? Because I do that. I mean, I literally have blood panels done, and then I have a nutritionist, and then I use that to actually fine tune everything. So like my B and my D and all these vitamins and everything is where it should be. But I don't know how common that is. So is that something you recommend? But which, by the way, the outcome is I feel outstanding. I can eat healthy, I exercise, I feel phenomenal. Like I feel like crap if I wake up and I don't eat right or I don't exercise. And eventually, like you do the right thing, the bad thing just feels so horrible that you stop doing it. But I wonder how common that is, and if that's something that you recommend where people go to that level of regular blood panels testing and then making the adjustments. So like health wise, they're not just exercising and eating right, but they're actually keeping track of all of their levels and making sure that all those things are as they should be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's something I recommend, because a lot of times when people go, like, you work with someone who looks at your values, they likely use a different range than the medical range. A lot of times when people get blood work and they're having symptoms, they're told, well, there's nothing really wrong here, or it's not that bad. And so they kind of just go away until it gets so bad that they end up on medication. But the truth is there's the medical range, which is the average range. And those red marks show up like, okay, you're high here, I'm going to have to start giving you insulin, because those are medical ranges. Those are based off when you start needing pharmaceuticals. But the actual ranges for healthy individuals is a variance. It's one, there are actual ranges for being healthy, not just needing medication. And two, there's everyone's own individual range of what's going to feel the best for them. So by doing work in an area where one, you're using the set of ranges for health, not medicine, that's one factor. And then two, finding out what your own optimal is. And like you said, Ty, you can feel amazing. And a lot of people I meet, I'll meet people that say like, oh my gosh, like I feel great and I drink alcohol, and okay, cool. And then they'll come over and they'll ask me for socks because they say I've got really nasty fungus on my feet and I don't want to drag my fungus over your carpet. This is the same person that just said they felt great and they got fungus overgrowth. So many people, they don't realize, the state that they're in because they've never really felt that good. Like you said, once you start feeling good, it's actually kind of unbearable to go back. Your brain sets a new level of what it expects. And that's true whether it's finance, and it's true whether it's freedom, and it's also true in health.
The second time you mentioned alcohol, and I'm interested, how toxic is alcohol really? Because a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, deal with high stress. I think drugs, marijuana, I think alcohol, I think these are, normal go-to for a lot of entrepreneurs that I know. So like, what do you find is that the health effects of like drugs like marijuana and alcohol, and how does that adversely, if it does, affect our ability to have a healthy mindset?
That's a really interesting question, Ty, and I'm glad you're asking it. It's, with any substance, like whether it's coffee or caffeine, we can feel really great using some of these substances. Like, a lot of clients I know, they'll use edibles because they can relax, and sometimes they can really help with their sleep. But there are other things that are natural, that are normal, that you can use to get your body to be in that state. You may not need a substance. So sometimes we just ask ourselves, is this giving us the result we want? Obviously, there's really no benefits per se to alcohol. And if you enjoy the taste, like I enjoy the taste, I like to have it. And I'm not here to demonize it, but if you have an infection or you respond poorly to it, pay attention to those kind of things, because you want to repair some of the internal environment before you keep exposing yourself to something that the stimulus is probably not being well received. But as far as what I see most common for entrepreneurs, actually, Ty, it's caffeine. Caffeine is the biggest issue that they have, because there's a few things going on. So one, it pushes your sleep wake cycle back. So for example, when you drink caffeine, you want to wake up later and you go to bed later. Okay. So two, it's changing your cortisol levels, which is your hormone levels for stress response. And there's cortisol and there's cortisone. So basically you release the hormone and then you have to convert it in order to change the effects so they don't become too rampant. And people can actually run out of the ability to balance that. And some people don't know that. And one of the ways you can figure that out is you can do saliva tests and do an average ratio for it. And so you'll meet someone that's like, yeah, I push all the time, I drink coffee. And the more stress you have as an entrepreneur, it's going to naturally raise cortisol. And then you're drinking caffeine and it's raising cortisol. And then you run out of the ability to buffer it with the cortisone. And what also happens too, because whenever we're in a stressed state, which is what coffee does, is it will actually put blood flow away from the organs into the extremities. And that's why it can be great if you're lifting or doing activity, because you're more what's called sympathetic, like you're more primed. But what that also does is it takes the blood flow away from the organs, which means digestion and other functions are decreased. So then we're eating and going through our day with actually less optimal function in all these other areas. And so that does create other issues downstream. And so that, I would say, is probably one of the hardest things for some people to really deal with. Even if you're drinking really great microtoxin tested, there's no toxins whatsoever, there's no mold, there's no fungus, there's no pesticides. It's just being in a sympathetic state all the time that has consequences.
What do you think is your best health advice? Like, as an entrepreneur, I want to be healthy. If you're talking to somebody like me, what do you think is the best things that you've learned that somebody should be able to do to be able to have a healthy lifestyle? I don't even want to say lifestyle, but you know what I'm saying? Like, have a health, when health obviously ties into mindset. So what are the things that every entrepreneur should do, every person should be doing to basically be healthy?
Yeah. So I think what I'd like to do here, Ty, is just, since you and I can kind of role play it, for you, what would optimal health look like? Because that answer is going to be different depending on,
let's say, look good and feel good. I want to look good. I want to look like I'm in shape, and I want to feel good. I want to wake up without needing caffeine. I want to go to bed without needing like a depressant, like you said, with alcohol, pot, or whatever it may be. Like that's my ultimate goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So looking good, let's just take that, for example, which is body composition. Okay. So one of the things you want to make sure of, if you're focused on body composition, which is really body fat levels, is that you're not having excessive amounts of candida. Okay. So candida is a fungus. Essentially, it's one of the reasons why, besides the toxicity side of it, is, and I'll see this very commonly, people that struggle to lose weight, like you'll meet people where it's like, yeah, they're overweight. And then you hang out with them and you're like, wow, okay, this person's not eating that many calories. So why they're overweight? Well, one of the things about candida is it's part of a normal ecology in the gut. But what it does is it actually makes you absorb nutrients way more effectively. So it helps you with uptake. But the problem with that is it's so good at doing that you can eat low calorie and still not lose weight. That makes sense. So some people that really struggle with body composition, fat loss, muscle tone, well, they actually have quite severe candida overgrowths. And I'll see that. So if the way you look is a priority from a perspective of body composition, you want to make sure that you're not running with overgrowths of candida, because it makes it really difficult and you'll crave a lot of starches. So that's your person that's like, I love bread, potatoes, chips, those kind of things. Like they just have like, oh yeah, I have poor discipline. But in reality, they have these overgrowths of microbiome that really crave that. And it goes hand in hand with struggling with body composition. So that would be one piece of advice that I would say, is make sure you're not struggling with that. The second thing is looking at your fasting glucose levels. Okay. So your ability to actually be shredded is really based off your ability to uptake and move glucose and not be sitting in a high level of blood sugar. And we can think about that. Like, obviously we don't want to have high blood sugar because we don't want to become insulin resistant and get diabetes, but you can still sit on the high end without having diabetes. And so we want to make sure that we're actually managing our blood sugar through the day effectively. And stress, chronic stress, especially as an entrepreneur, raises blood sugar. Caffeine raises blood sugar. So a lot of the things, skipping meals, long periods of not eating, raises blood sugar. So a lot of the things that I'll see a lot of entrepreneurs do, they actually hurt body composition and they hurt someone's ability to actually lose fat. So those would be things right away without implementing anything from a training perspective in terms of looking good. And in terms of not needing things to numb yourself, being very intentional and curious about why you are partaking in these things. If you're like, man, I really need this to relax, well, what's actually increasing the stress? And are you really mindful about your stress, or are you numbing out with some kind of substance because you're not really addressing the real issue around the stress? That's what I'll see very commonly. Like a lot of times people will turn towards, let's say, a stimulant like caffeine because they need the energy. So what's going on in the lifestyle design that you don't have the energy? It could even be overserving clients, overpacking your schedule, not giving yourself enough time to really rest, sleep. Maybe you need a nap, and not paying attention to those kind of things drives us to compensate in other areas where then we're making up for it in another area. So that's really the work that I do with clients is, yeah, there's the lifestyle bacterial belief system, but you have to marry all of those to really be optimal.
Yeah, it's really impressive, which, by the way, my nutritionist is exactly on the same play page as you. Like, gut issues is like her thing. Like, bacterial gut issues are like the root of so many issues that she's helped me realize. It's really interesting. And what I love about the way that you work and the way you explain things is that it's like, there's so many things, it's almost overwhelming. But with you, it's like, look, here, what's a symptom? And let's address that symptom one at a time. Or the second component of what I hear a lot of you is, what's your goal? Like, what is it you're trying to accomplish? Like, let's not just talk about being, healthy. What does that mean to you? And then, oh, you want that outcome. Well, here's what's prevent you from getting an outcome. I just love the way that you break that down and think about it. One of the things I've noticed on your website and your content going through it is imposter syndrome, which I don't think you really refer to it as imposter syndrome in the training I've seen. But I think there's this aspect of entrepreneurs where like they feel unsure or have the inability to be able to do things and struggle with their identity because they can't be, especially in the starting phases, like the entrepreneur they want to be. Would you see a lot of that? I mean, how common is this imposter syndrome aspect of what entrepreneurs experience?
I see a lot of it, especially when people raise their rates. That's really the biggest thing, because being a high ticket sales coach, a lot of what people struggle with in the first place is feeling worthy to charge what they want to charge for the lifestyle they want. So that first issue is, I don't feel worthy to charge that, and that is imposter syndrome. And then once they start charging it, the second thing they usually ask to navigate is the manifestation of that unworthiness showing up in their business. So when they have someone say no, when they have someone go, oh yeah, I worked with you and now I'm canceling, like they actually make that business situation mean that they're unworthy and they want to go back to the old pricing, or they want to shrink and stop at marketing themselves. Something happens inside of them emotionally where they stop showing up for that. And they're more available for stepping back into the unworthiness than saying, I'm worthy of this rate. I'm worthy of living this life that I want. I'm worthy of being happy and fulfilled in my business and having all this space and time. And I'm going to stand in that. And that's really the work that I support clients with, because a lot of my clients, Ty, are people that have really done a lot of work at being great at their skill set. Okay. So they might be like myself. And it's really why I love high ticket sales. It's like the work I do, like your nutritionist, sounds really, really fantastic. And that is a skill set I admire. So like learning that skill set was something I wanted to do. And then I have different skill sets in different areas, almost a category of one. Okay. Like I don't know many people that can address the physical component as well as the biology component, as well as the mindset component, and then also the business component to actually make the lifestyle the way you want to. So my clients will be like a category of one. They'll have these skill sets, but they won't be living the lifestyle they want because they're not charging what that skill set is really worth to the right person. And so they're battled with this feeling of unworthiness, even though they've done all this work to want to feel worthy and build all these skill sets. Like, I'm not sure what your nutritionist charges, let's just say, but my guess is if you went, wow, based off how I feel, the results I've gotten, how she helps me understand the implications of a bacterial overgrowth, like what is that really worth to you in the lifetime of the work that you do together? And is she really charging what that's worth? And is she really living the lifestyle that she really wants? And I don't know if the answer is yes or no, but see, that is really the work that I help people with, because you can have all these skills and you can have all these talents, but if you don't believe that you're worthy of receiving what that gift is, then you yourself never really fully are able to receive. And that's the struggle of the entrepreneur sometimes.
That's really interesting. And I think what you say plagues everybody that's an entrepreneur, because that's one of the biggest mistakes I think I see people make, and myself included, just don't charge enough for their products and services. So when I come to you and I say, hey, look, here's my problem, you say, look, you need to be charging a lot more. How do you start fixing that problem? Do you start on mindset and start repairing and fixing that I don't feel worthy aspect and get that fixed, and then dive into helping them understand the product and the service and how they can actually, do, I mean, where does that process start?
Yeah. So the first thing is, most people come to me and they don't go like, I have an undercharging issue. They usually have a symptom, right? So it's like, I don't get to spend the time with my family. I've got so many clients that barely get to eat lunch. Or it's a physical symptom, like I'm having a pain and my stress is really high. So that's usually the gateway to entering. There's some kind of pain or problem. And then looking at like, okay, what have you tried for this, really? Like, and why has that not worked? Like, understanding the mechanism of why that's failed is really important. Because if we don't understand that mechanism and how that model was created, we could pick a new solution based off that exact same mechanism, and that would just create the same result. So we have to understand, like, one, what are you suffering from? But two, what have you tried? What's the mechanism for the way that works? And why would that not work? Like, them getting clear on that is really where I start. Because otherwise, like, I'm not going to make a recommendation. For example, let's say you said, yeah, I did want to charge more, but I wasn't able to get people to say yes, so I stopped. And the symptom is that I still struggle in my business with having the lifestyle that I want. So then I'd be curious about what happened inside of you when you were going on that journey. Like, what was your way of thinking about that? What was your way of responding to that? And understanding the mechanism going inside the person is really where I start. And then understanding that mechanism, yes, is that serving you? Is that getting you the result you want? But also going a little bit deeper so they understand how the brain works. Because if you don't understand how the brain works, when something hits you, like, oh my gosh, I just got rejection. Oh my gosh, that person canceled. You don't see it as part of the journey. You actually see it as, I'm not worthy, because you're making it about you. So helping them understand that process in the mindset and being able to win and learn through that process is part of it. And in the actual starting of work with clients, like once we're actually going to work together, one of the things I help them understand is really what makes them different. Because a lot of times as entrepreneurs, if we're battled with worthiness, a lot of where we're paying attention is like, who else does what I do? So if there's other people out there with the same product, then how am I going to charge for that? And so then we start pricing ourselves to the average or maybe a little bit above average of what we see the market charge for that. Instead of looking at, well, what do I bring that's unique? We look at who else is doing this, and this is why I can't charge, or I need to be doing it like this. So even the way they start to think about their business has to shift in order for them to actually change the program, because we're not here to just raise prices and say, oh my gosh, I'm a high ticket now. What we're really here to do is understand what you bring as an entrepreneur that's really a unique gift, to celebrate that, to be able to stand in that, and then to be able to support people through the conversation of deciding if that's really of value to them when they have a potential client in front of them.
Isaac, it's been phenomenal having you on here today. Like you said, I think at some point, it's interesting because I've never, 600 I think, interviews into this, and I've never found anybody with the unique skill sets you have, the way that you're able to work with the head, work with the chemicals, work on the physical side. It's just really interesting the way that you look at problems and how you systematically solve problems. I've never met anybody like you that does that. So just really, really, really impressive. And I wish we had, hours more to discuss because there's so many things I'd like to talk to you about. But those people that are watching or listening that want to learn more, that want to take a next step, that want to go down the road of correcting their issues, of figuring out what their symptoms are, how to fix those, getting their mindset right, what action should they take?
Yeah, so they can find me online at isaachoecoaching.com, and I'll spell it because it's ISAACHO, Ho, and coaching, which is COACHING.com. And I have a text line set up. So really what I help clients with is excelling in their business, health, and life. So not just one or the other. So you can text the word A-N-D, to 66866. And what we'll explore is really the area of your life in terms of success that you feel like is not currently available and how to create that. And just like we talked about on today's podcast, really reverse engineering the symptom, the mechanics, and really the mindset that actually creates that being in your life. And that's probably the best way to connect with.
Awesome. Isaac, thank you so much for your time and coming on with us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Ty, it's been a total pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. So everybody, if you're watching, listening to this, I can tell you that doing a lot of interviewing, being around a lot of people, having a really good network, I've never met anybody with the unique skill sets that Isaac has. And the ability, I don't know if you really appreciate how unique these skill sets are when put together and how powerful it is. It's how he's able to help people from recognize their worth. And then from recognizing their worth and their uniqueness, package their product and services the right way to earn considerably more money. And what that means is it means you can make a lot more working a lot less, because what I find is that a lot of our ultimate goal is it boils down to being with family. It boils down to that quality time with people that we care about the most. And the stuff of us making more money or getting more customers, that all, if we ask ourselves enough whys, drills down to that main point. But in order to do that, we have to have the time. That's hard as an entrepreneur if you are undercharging, if you don't have your mindset right, if you don't know what makes you unique and getting and really knowing your worth. So if you want to go down the road of doing it the right way and making a lot more with potentially spending a lot less time to do so, there's two things you should do. First of all, you got to go to Isaac's website. It's phenomenal. A lot of information and details of exactly the kind of transformation you may experience. And you can get that at isaachoecoaching.com. So that's ISAACHO coaching.com. The other thing you want to do is you want to text the word A-N-D, to 66866. And that'll get you started down the right path as well. So 2 actions to take. Remember, knowledge doesn't really mean anything or do anything for you if you don't take action based on that knowledge that you now have. So make sure you take those 2 actions. Text the word and to 66866. That's the word and, A-N-D, to 66866. And also go to isaachoecoaching.com. That's ISAACHO coaching.com to get started, get your mindset right, and start actually earning what you deserve to earn, and being able to have the comfortability and confidence in yourself that you should have to really succeed as an entrepreneur. So thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.